Thank you. Next, we'd like to welcome back to the State Capitol former Assembly member and now Executive Director of Children Now, Ted Lempert.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, and members. It's an honor to be back and an honor to be here on behalf of Children Now, a research policy and advocacy organization focusing on birth to 18 in an umbrella focus with the goal that I know you all share, and that is to try to ensure that every single one of our kids has the opportunity to reach their full potential. I'm just going to take a couple minutes to urge you all to, first thank you, and urge you all to be champions for investments and access to quality and Mr. Chavez, what we would term early learning and development programs, birth to 5. And the reason Children Now is pushing that is for the exact same reason we worked with all of you and so strongly supported the local control funding formula that the governor pushed last year. Why? Because there's a bipartisan consensus, I believe, that in our K-12 system, if some kids have access to a high-quality education, small class sizes, good teachers, good programming, then we need to work to make sure all kids have access to that. And what you all did last year was really extraordinary. You not only said access for all kids, you said some kids, kids in intense poverty, English language learners, foster care kids, needed even more help. Think of the birth to 5 system. I urge you to look at some research that hasn't been talked about today. I ran a study a few years ago. What are upper middle class and higher income families doing in their state? They are accessing very high quality services for their kids birth to 5. The opportunity gap, the achievement gap is enormous. And as we've all talked about this morning, learning begins at birth. So essentially, we all recognized last year that we need equal access to education. In fact, some kids need more. But yet we have a really, really dangerous gap going on in the birth to 5 years that for all of our sake, we need to address. So specifically, and I'll just take 30 seconds on each, 5 areas. One that hasn't been mentioned. We need to start at the beginning, very early, home visiting. Quality programs, only 2,000 families benefit right now from the state program. Not only is that need continued, but expanded upon. 2, and Deneen eloquently talked about this, building back the slots. Birth to 5 took the biggest hit from the recession. It needs to take the top priority in building that back this year. For example, there's only 10,000 Title V infant toddler slots throughout the state today. 3rd, just to associate myself with the comments made earlier, increase reimbursements rates. We've talked a lot about staff and a well-trained, stable, well-paid workforce. It's absolutely critical, as has been talked about, that we increase those reimbursement rates. 4th, quality associated, and we've talked about how California has been a leader in support for license accept training, need to continue that, and the QRIS system that's going on in a number of counties now to ultimately build that statewide. And finally, the TK proposal, and I'm glad there was some clarification in the discussion earlier. This ties into this theme of making sure we have access for all kids in a mixed delivery program and starting to really be serious about taking the funding we're doing in K-12 and recognizing that birth to 5 is not just as important, but more important. Let me close with a comment about priorities, because it's come up a lot. And believe me, I understand, having sat in your shoes, you're hearing from thousands of folks saying they all have the #1 priority. I would urge you to continue the leadership, which is extraordinary what you've done as a legislature, that not only do kids have to be the top priority, but starting early has to be the top. And if you look at the Federal Department of Commerce, California ranks 11th in state and local tax revenue, 11th of the 50 states. If kids are our priority, there's really no excuse for us not being the national leader in all these programs that we've talked about today, if our tax revenues are at that level. And finally, this conversation about 2-year-olds versus 4-year-olds, we need to step back for a second. As a parent, I didn't say, okay, I've got my services for my kids at age 3, so I'm not going to worry about 1 or I'm not going to worry about 4. In K through 12, we don't say we're going to focus on 2nd grade this year and ignore 11th grade. And I think we need to recognize how absolutely critical, in addition to all the others you've talked about, each of these years is for our future. Because if that 2-year-old today doesn't have that proper support, that's a child that might not reach their full potential, that's going to have a huge serious consequence on all of us in our economy. So the leadership you've provided in the last couple of years, I actually believe, while we've asked you for a lot as a field today, we're coming with you a lot of asks. We can do this. I thank you for your leadership and look forward to working with all of you. Thank you.
Next, we have Michael Olnick, President and Chief Executive Officer, Child Care Resource Center.
Thank you for inviting me here today. As you said, I'm Michael Olnick. I'm President and CEO of the Child Care Resource Center. CCRC provides resource and referral, administers child care subsidy programs, Stage 2, Stage 3, the General AP in the northern end of Los Angeles County and all of San Bernardino County. We also provide Stage 1 child care, Head Start, Early Head Start in the San Fernando Valley and the Antelope Valleys. We provide quality improvement programs to a limited number of child care providers through grants with First 5 LA and a literacy program with First 5 San Bernardino. We're also in the process of implementing a home visitor program for parents with infants, also funded through First 5 LA. So I want to thank you. A lot of the themes that you've heard, we're doing all those things. The way that the program was structured today, I got a little concerned when I saw that the discussion divided child care from early education. It seems to me all children should be in stimulating developmentally appropriate environments, and working parents need full-day, full-year care. For the last 35 years, the number of mothers in the workforce has hovered around 65%. Assuming that child care does not have a learning component, even if the standards aren't there, creates a disservice to providers who work hard to provide stimulating environments and the R&Rs that support these providers in improving their practice. There are 3 million children in 0 to 5 in California, 25% below the federal poverty line, another 24% eligible for state subsidy. If you take the 65% of working mothers, multiply it by all those things, there's 955,000 children who need full-day care and 468,000 children who are eligible for state subsidy. As noted in your briefing document, 79% of Head Start is braided with state preschool to create full-day programs. This means 65,000 children receive a full-day, high-quality experience. We have another opportunity coming up shortly with the federal appropriation for early Head Start partnerships, which would create full-day, full-year early Head Start programs and require child care providers to have much higher qualifications for entering into these partnerships. Over the last 5 years, we've lost $30 million statewide in quality dollars that invested in improving the field. We lost funding to move license-exempt providers into licensing. Resource and referral agencies have not been able to keep up with technological advances that would allow us to provide consumer education to technologically savvy parents. Parents enrolled in the child care subsidy system are limited in their choices, as the rates, as you've heard, that we are able to pay are based on the 2005 regional market rate studies, which was actually 2004 rates, 10 years ago, and will only allow them to choose from the lowest cost options. In my service area alone, we lost 32% of our licensed family child care providers and 13% of our centers over the last 4 years. 65% of children in child care subsidy programs are now in licensed exempt settings. Last year, when we surveyed our largest centers that served a mixed population of subsidized and fee-paying families, we asked them what would be the impact of any additional cuts to their subsidy payments. 35% said that they would go out of business. So if we're going to rescue the current population of children in poverty, we need to increase the quality of care for all children while ensuring their parents can go to school or go to work all day, all year. We can do this by reinvesting in the current system. Create incentives for all providers to improve their practice and work towards achieving higher quality programs in currently existing programs by working to expand the QRIS system statewide so that there's a way to provide graduated reimbursement rates for providers who provide a higher level of care. Many other states already do this. Increase the state reimbursement rate for state preschool and add the wraparound component to this already existing infrastructure so that children whose families earn too much for Head Start will still be able to participate in full-day programs. Provide funding for the 21% of Head Start programs that currently don't provide braided programs. Increase the family income threshold so that more lower-income families are eligible for child care and eliminate the family fees. Before creating another system like transitional kindergarten, complete a study to determine the demand for TK as well as for full-day care. Right now, there's an opportunity to create new spaces for very young children through these federally funded early Head Start partnerships. However, we don't know if providers can fulfill the federal requirements. The state has an opportunity to improve the lives of many infants and toddlers by investing in improving the quality of child care providers by increasing rates, and tying them to higher expectations. Thank you.
And last but not least, we have Afuru Lynch, Parent Voices Oakland.
Hello, my name is Afuru Lynch. I'm a parent leader with Parent Voices Oakland. I would like to thank you all today for allowing me to express my concerns as to why our children are still waiting for affordable, quality child care. I'm truly blessed to say that I'm on my 11th year of working in the hospitality industry. This includes nights, weekends, and most holidays. So it is extremely difficult for me to find child care. My 3-year-old still has no child care and remains on the waiting list she's been on since her birth. I thank God that my 5-year-old is now at school age and attends an all-day kindergarten. A child care subsidy would open up so many doors for my family and I. Going back to school has been a dream of mine since my oldest daughter was born 6 years ago, but it remains a dream because of the hamster wheel that I am on. A typical day for me includes spending 3 hours on public transportation, taking my one daughter to school, taking my other daughter to daycare, then back on BART to San Francisco to work my 8-hour job. Many days I've had to call in sick because I don't have anyone to watch my daughter. There's constant stress to figure out who will watch my daughter on a daily basis. A child care subsidy would bring stability, security, and peace of mind to my family. I'm sorry. It would allow me to work without the stress. It would allow my girls to be safe and have some consistency. I've been told that the only way to get child care is for me to quit my job and get on CalWorks, where child care is an entitlement. There are so many families that need CalWorks. We should not be against each other. For families that are on the waiting list, child care is not an entitlement. It is up to the governor and the legislator to make it a priority and put funding for it. I've heard that there are surpluses. I've heard that the governor wants to repay debt, but there is $0 going to reinvest in child care and the safety net. It is time we start reinvesting in our children. In addition to child care slots, and as you've heard, increasing the rates of child care providers, Parent Voices is also asking you to update the income guidelines for subsidized child care. It's not right that parents have to turn down promotions, take pay cuts, or reduce their hours so they can stay eligible for child care. If they were updated, a family like mine could earn $3,000 or $4,000 more a year, money that could be saved for their children's college funds, for family improvements, or having a safe car that runs. As you debate the budget, please remember the faces of my daughters, my babies, and the thousands of others waiting for you to make them a priority. Please remember what our t-shirts say. Child care keeps parents earning and children learning. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Lynch, for your testimony. Questions from the committee?
I don't know if you're ready to wind it up, but I'd like to really compliment the chairs and the staffs for an excellent hearing.
I defer all credit to the staff. Thank you. Ms. Skinner.
I wanted to thank Efuru, our parent, for, I think, we know that all the rest of the folks who testified interact with our children or families every day, but to hear directly from the parent and from the experiences they have with the patchwork system that we have is so needed. And I imagine, I know that part of your stress is in describing what you're having to do every day. And, I think we have a big conundrum on our hands. We need to provide high quality, universal care for our 0 to 5 children. And we need to do it in a way that works in our different regions. And if we look at, for example, let's say we just were to take the model of uniting within our school district system, we still have many school districts that provide no transportation whatsoever. And so if we have a preschool center that's associated with the school district and it's a good distance from the family, then we have the kind of circumstance that Farouk discussed, where it takes, an hour or hours for the parent to get their child to that facility. But we also have areas where they're not even served by transit. So unless the family has a car, and this is why, and I'll say so many of us, because it was my circumstance, it is why many of us end up using the family provider in our neighborhood, because that family provider didn't have restrictions on when we worked overtime or on weekends and was right down the street because we didn't have a car and there was another transport. So now, I'm not arguing now that we only support family provider circumstances. I want quality, and I want to elevate the way we approach this provision of care for our children so that we are doing it in a way that is supporting development of children and is giving them the highest quality nurturing, learning preparation, love, care. And we need to elevate the profession to do that. We need to pay better. We need to increase standards. We need to do workforce development. And so as we grapple with the different proposals we have before us, I think that notion of, yes, we need to restore some things now, but I think we need the long-range plan. And I guess I reject the notion that we don't have resources, because we do have choices. And it's not that we have unlimited amounts of money, but we do have choices. And so we need to figure out how to do this in the way that's most cost efficient, but still ensures that quality and lessens the burden on the families. And I think that's the challenge we have. And we may not be able to, solve it in the short time between now and June 15th when we adopt a budget, but if we can try as a budget committee in the Assembly to look at this in a long-range way and try to ask our staff to help us develop sort of, a multi-year or phased-in type of plan to how we achieve this, I think that's going to assist us a great deal. And I really appreciate all of your testimony.
Thank you, Ms. Skinner. Any other comments or questions?
Well, I think we all agree that we have tremendous challenges and on the budget committees, and these are good challenges, though. We've had challenges in the past that weren't very happy challenges, but these are good challenges as to where do we put resources. And as we've stated time and time again, a budget is really a statement of your values. Where you spend your money is where your heart is. And we have to constantly push that agenda because it's going to be important as we not only lay out what we do this year, but as I've asked the various budget committees and the caucuses, is that we've done some damage over the years. It's not going to be a one-year fix, but we need a plan. And that's really clear in the area of preschool and child care. We need a plan, a vision of where do we want to be in the next 3 to 4 years. Where do we want to go as a state? And I think as we talk more, we realize that we have to be in a position to provide child care for every parent in the state, whether it's minimal subsidy or whether it's just various options of those who can afford it. But we have to be able to provide child care if we really want a very functioning state, as we say we need, in terms of people being able to work, care for themselves, and provide the kind of stability and security for children and families that's so critical. It really is a matter of our priorities. And as I've said, when I was in Sweden and Norway this past year, it was clear what the values were of that society, where they put their tax dollars, where they put their money. And it was interesting in my conversation about taxation with some of them, and they mentioned the high taxes they pay. And I remember gasped for a moment at the cost of it, but someone in Sweden said, hold up, don't get excited. They said, we don't have your worries. They said, we know exactly what's going to happen to our children, We don't worry about child care. We don't worry about whether they're going to be able to afford universities, because all of our education is free. If they can achieve, they can go to the university, they can go to med school, they can go to law school. And they said, and when we get sick, we know what's going to happen to us. And when we get old, we know that there'll be someone to care for us. So we don't have your stresses. And that was amazing, because they were so correct. And from the moment you come in this world and leave, you have stresses about how you're going to pay for child care, whether you're going to qualify for this, how you're going to pay for college, whether you're going to have enough money for your kids to go to college, even if they're brilliant, where you're going to do this, where you're going to do that, and when you get old, my God, who's going to take care of me? I mean, so I think our budget is a statement of our values, and there's no greater value that we say we have than for our children. So I'm hoping that we'll have a plan, that those of us who are involved will say, okay, they didn't get me this year, I didn't get all I needed this year, but there is a plan to increase what we pay for our providers. There is a plan to increase the standard so that if we don't do it this year, we're phasing it in over a couple of years so that every provider has certain kinds of things. And if we decide to do preschool for all, that we have a plan that rolls it out in a reasonable manner so that we can see where we're going. I think if we have a plan, I think California buys it, because California has always invested in its children, always has, and hopefully always will invest in its children when they know there's a plan and that we're serious about it. So I want to thank all of you for coming. I feel your pain. I've been there, done that with preschool. But we hope to be able to, as a state, to develop some level of humanity about what we do, particularly from 0 to 5, because we have really not focused on that as much or as well as we should have in terms of coordination of programs. So thank you. Thanks to the staff for putting together such a wonderful presentation. And thanks to all of you who came and stayed so long and are waiting around the wall to tell us great things.
Yes, and I received a suggestion that, speaking of the realities of child care, if there are any parents that need to get back to your children or get back to your daily lives who would like to testify first, please approach the microphone.
Mr. Marisucci,
Yes.
if I could just make, I wanted to also indicate to Mr. Lemper that I appreciated your putting forward the concept of our applying the concepts within the local control funding formula towards our approach to this issue, and I really wanted to indicate that I think that's a very wise suggestion.
Thank you. I do need to ask all public comments to try to limit your comments to 1 minute. With that, please come forward.